What if the most powerful names in tech, politics, and media kept showing up in the private photo collection of Jeffrey Epstein? And we're only just now seeing the pictures. Newly released Epstein photos are out, and they include chilling Lolita quotes written across a woman's body, stacks of redacted foreign passports belonging to women, and fresh images of world-famous figures like Bill Gates, Noam Chomsky, Steve Bannon, Sergey Brin, and more. This isn't a conspiracy TikTok. These images were released by members of Congress, just as the Justice Department faces a legal deadline to release Epstein-related files under the new Epstein Files Transparency Act. Stay to the end, because the most important part of this story is what these photos don't show and the massive questions they raise. On Thursday, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee dropped a new batch of around 68 photos pulled from Jeffrey Epstein's estate, including material from his personal computer and email account. These images are part of a much larger archive, roughly 95,000 photos that Epstein's estate recently turned over to Congress. The latest release is timed very deliberately. It landed just before the Justice Department's deadline to disclose Epstein files under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, a law requiring more public transparency around evidence and documents linked to Epstein. Lawmakers say this is about accountability, shining light on Epstein's world and the people connected to him, not letting the story quietly fade away. One of the most disturbing parts of this release is a set of images linked to Vladimir Nabokov's novel Lolita, a book about a middle-aged man's sexual obsession with a 12-year-old girl. In at least one photo, lines from Lolita are literally written across a woman's body, turning the text into a staged visual scene. Lawmakers and reporters have highlighted how deeply unsettling that is, given Epstein's history of abusing underage and young women. Seeing Lolita used in this way inside Epstein's private collection feeds into a pattern. A man already convicted of sex crimes surrounding girls, with imagery echoing a novel about sexual exploitation of a minor. Another striking category in these photos is a series of passports and identification documents that appear to belong to women from multiple countries, including Lithuania, Ukraine, the Czech Republic, Russia, South Africa, and Italy. The IDs and passports are heavily redacted, with personal details blacked out, but committee Democrats say these documents belong to women connected to Epstein and others in his orbit. The images show that Epstein's world was not limited to the United States or one social circle. It involved women from a range of foreign countries, adding to questions about how they were recruited, moved, or controlled. Given past allegations that Epstein shifted his attention to recruiting women from Eastern Europe after earlier legal trouble in Florida, the presence of passports from those regions is especially alarming. The photos also feature well-known public figures, which is why social media is exploding over this release. Among the names appearing in this and related recent batches, Bill Gates, former Microsoft CEO and philanthropist, seen standing with women whose faces are obscured in some images. Gates has previously admitted meeting Epstein several times and later called those meetings a huge mistake. Noam Chomsky, the renowned linguist and public intellectual, appears seated next to Epstein in what looks like an aircraft cabin in some of the newly publicized images. Chomsky has said he met Epstein occasionally and that Epstein helped move funds between accounts without using Epstein's money. Steve Bannon, former White House chief strategist, appears among the public figures linked by the latest releases and prior photo batches. Sergey Brin, Google co-founder, appears in a social setting that also includes Epstein and New York Times columnist David Brooks, according to the PBS report. Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. In earlier photo releases, both the current president Donald Trump and former president Bill Clinton appear in photos from Epstein's collection, along with other public figures like Woody Allen, Prince Andrew, and Richard Branson. Important note, the articles repeatedly stress that there is no evidence these individuals knew about or participated in Epstein's crimes simply because they appear in photos with him. The context, dates, and circumstances of many of these images are unclear, which is one reason lawmakers say more documentation needs to be released. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee say they released these photos to increase pressure on the Justice Department to fully comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The deadline requires the DOJ to make unclassified Epstein-related records public, similar in spirit to past laws around JFK assassination files. Committee members have called the photos disturbing and argued that the American public has a right to know how deeply Epstein's network reached into elite circles. At the same time, they emphasize that photos alone don't prove criminal behavior by every person pictured. Instead, they raise questions that more documents, schedules, communications, and financial records might answer. Even with these 68 images out, they represent only a tiny fraction of the roughly 95,000 photos reportedly provided from Epstein's estate. Most of the pictures released so far come with no captions, no dates, and no context, leaving open questions about when they were taken, why, and how they tie into Epstein's criminal activities. Key unknowns still include how each person pictured new Epstein and what that relationship actually involved, whether the passports and IDs reflect trafficking, recruitment, or something else, how these images connect to the thousands of pages of schedules, emails, and financial records already referenced in earlier Epstein Files coverage. That gap between shocking visuals and incomplete explanations is exactly why pressure is building for a full document release, not just photos that spark headlines. The combination of Lolita imagery, foreign passports belonging to women, and high-profile names is tailor-made to go viral in the age of social media, conspiracy threads, and true crime obsession. News outlets and YouTube channels are already highlighting specific frames, gates, Chomsky on a plane, the scribbled Lolita lines, as people try to piece together a bigger narrative from a handful of images. But the legitimate news reports are careful. They present these photos as part of a transparency push, not as final proof of guilt for everyone captured in a frame with Epstein. The real turning point will be what the Justice Department actually releases under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, and whether that dump answers questions or raises even more. Expect more names, more documents, and more photos to surface as Congress and the public push for full disclosure of Epstein's contacts, travel logs, and communications. Comment respectfully with what they think these photos actually prove and what they don't. Subscribe and turn on notifications for deep dive breakdowns as each new batch of Epstein files and images comes out. Share the video with anyone seeing wild claims online, so they get a fact-based breakdown instead of just viral speculation.